just to reflect on what strategies I want to reuse, like bring back into my practice or into the way I live. Just acknowledge that I'm standing on Ngunnawal land, and I pay respects to elders past, present and future. And I'm really glad that you're calling me from Eora Nation, where I've spent so much time, and I miss the ocean. Haven't been able to see it for a long time.
I wanted to start with haircuts.
Yes.
You were saying something yesterday, right? Did you cut your own hair?
I did. And for those of you, part of this whole COVID shutdown is that it reminds me, and the talk about the upcoming recession is, it seems to have flipped me back into remembering when I was a recent graduate and where I didn't have any money to do anything. And I'm thinking a lot about my students and what's coming up for them and what their situation is. And I sort of am using this time to do some things that maybe I'll never ever get to do again, and cutting my own hair and looking like I've got a bad punk haircut is probably one of the things I can do because I'm not leaving the house. So,
well, it's all about layering, like in your work.
Yeah, but anybody who can actually cut hair can see it's not super great.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned, for a long time, Australia, it seems like we're probably going to hit a recession. And of course, Australia has been the only economy in the Western world that has had the longest, run of not having a recession since 1991, with the famous recession we had to have that Paul Keating announced. So I guess Taking us back to that time, what was it like for you and fellow graduates coming out of the University of Western Sydney Art School?
Yeah, and in 1991, I was still a student. I was living, I would move out of home and then back home and out of home and back home, depending on whether I had a job or, whether we had a lease on a place that was super run down but affordable. But I guess the other thing, just thinking about Australia generally at that time, was that how little there was in terms of places to go out, cafes. So if you weren't living in the inner city of Sydney, everything was do it yourself parties, do it yourself fashion, do it yourself looks. So I'm kind of thinking again about that and thinking about all the things that the sort of mining boom that has provided us in terms of ability to travel and to go out, to have amazing meals, et cetera, that all of that's going. And so it's interesting because I'm not afraid of it going, because obviously I've lived through this period of not having it. And it's nice to have it, but also it just in terms of how difficult it's been to stop consumption in order to kind of save the environment, in terms of the only way that we can actually really cut carbon is just to stop doing stuff, and how naturalized all of that going out has become. So I think it's been a really interesting time for me to reflect on what strategies I want to reuse, like bring back into my practice or into the way I live, and what strategies we can't remobilize because the world has changed so much.
As someone whose work is so much about, the kind of signs and phrases and the public voice, not just in sort of activist campaigns, but certain phraseologies that come across, is what's been your interest in the way that people have increasingly, had their voice heard in isolation, be it people holding up, signs in their front windows, to what they're doing online and so forth?
Yeah, I think that's super interesting in terms of the return to the creativity of people who may not think of themselves as artists. And I'm quite interested in that slippage between the folk art or the crafter and an artist. And, is it worth making some separation there or not? And I'm really interested, in this culture of the signs now becoming the handwritten, the hand-drawn, becoming a way that people have their voice in public. I think it's a follow-on very strongly from the Children's Climate March, and the way that, different to the sorts of trade union marches or different to the sorts of protests that might have happened, like Palm Sunday Peace March, that every individual wants to hold a sign, and they're quite small. And that's really interesting because, of course, what that's about is about being somewhere with an analog sign and it being then shared on an electronic platform. So those two things are working in concert with each other rather than in conflict. But also that people really, the whole of our culture is very much about individual voices and the way that an individual can be brought up and then be given a sort of power to speak, and that people gathering behind that voice, liking, retweeting, resharing, becomes a moment in a particular point in time. I think this moment of isolation where people are, putting those signs up, it's an ongoing effect of things that we've already been doing, and I'm certainly interested in that.
And I guess to wrap up, tell us about your fabulous t-shirt.
Well, this is a t-shirt, an artist, and most days in shutdown I'm trying to wear an artist's t-shirt. I know that's a very isolated sense of solidarity, but this one is by Hannah Bronte. I bought it at Black Lash Projects in Brisbane, a cooperative of various Indigenous designers and makers and curators and new media people. And so shout out to the Brisbane mob.
Big shout out. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Meet when we can on the other side.
Thank you.
Thank you.